You sent the email too soon. Or you said the wrong thing in the meeting. Or you missed the deadline, forgot the appointment, made the promise you could not keep. Now it is late, the house is still, and your mind will not leave it alone. You replay the moment, edit the sentence you should have spoken, imagine the disappointment in someone's face. The mistake sits in your chest like a stone, and beneath it runs a harder question: what if I cannot recover from this? What if this error defines me, marks me, closes a door I needed to walk through? The clock shows a number you did not want to see, and you know tomorrow will arrive whether you are rested or not. This is the hour when failure feels final, when one misstep seems to erase months of effort, when starting again sounds less like hope and more like punishment. The Stoics did not pretend mistakes were trivial. They lived through exile, lost fortunes, faced execution, watched their words twisted and their reputations torn. They knew what it meant to fail in ways that could not be undone. Yet they also understood something we forget in the middle of the night: a mistake is not a verdict. It is information. Seneca spent years advising an emperor who later ordered his death. He knew the cost of misplaced trust, the sting of wasted effort. But his lesson remains useful. He would tell us that the error itself is in the past, outside our control the moment it occurs. What remains in our power is how we interpret it, what we do next, and whether we allow one failure to corrupt the steady work that follows. Recovery does not mean erasing what happened. It means refusing to let that moment become the whole story. Epictetus taught students who had lost everything, former slaves, men without status, people rebuilding from nothing. His instruction was plain: you cannot control what has already occurred, but you can control your next intention. If you spoke harshly, you can choose courtesy now. If you missed the mark, you can choose honesty about it. If you broke trust, you can choose the slow, unglamorous work of rebuilding it. Starting again is not a grand gesture. It is the decision to take the next small action with integrity, even when no one is watching, even when the outcome is uncertain. The discipline is not in feeling confident. It is in acting rightly despite the weight in your chest. You may feel tonight that you have lost credibility, that people will remember only the mistake. That fear is understandable. But Marcus would remind us that our worth is not determined by a single moment, nor by the opinions that follow it. If you acted without full attention, the remedy is to bring attention back. If you rushed, the remedy is patience. If you hid the error, the remedy is transparency. None of these repairs guarantee applause. They do not promise that others will forgive quickly or that consequences will disappear. What they do is return you to your own integrity. And integrity, once reclaimed, becomes the foundation for everything that follows. You do not need the mistake to vanish. You need to know that you can still act well in its aftermath. There is a kind of dignity in admitting fault without theater. Not the public confession that seeks sympathy, but the quiet acknowledgement that you were wrong, that you see it clearly, and that you intend to do better. This is not weakness. It is precision. The Stoic does not waste energy defending the indefensible or constructing elaborate explanations. If the error is yours, you name it. If the harm is real, you address it. If repair is possible, you begin. If it is not, you accept that limit and turn your effort toward what remains within your influence. This is how trust is rebuilt, not through promises, but through consistent, unglamorous action over time. You do not argue your way back into credibility. You earn it, one choice at a time, without fanfare. It helps to separate two things we often confuse, the mistake and the pattern. A single error is not proof of incompetence. It is not evidence that you are careless, doomed, or unworthy of responsibility. It is one moment in a longer sequence. The question is not whether you failed once, but whether you are willing to learn from it and adjust. Seneca's wisdom here is practical. He would say that the wise person does not repeat the same mistake, not because they are perfect, but because they pay attention. They ask, "What was I not seeing? What assumption led me astray? What condition, haste, distraction, fear, made me vulnerable?" These are not questions of shame. They are questions of craft. You are studying your own process so that you can refine it. This is how failure becomes useful. Tonight, you do not need to have all the answers. You do not need to solve everything before you sleep. What you need is to decide that tomorrow you will take one honest action. Perhaps it is an apology without excuses. Perhaps it is a correction, a follow-up, a request for guidance. Perhaps it is simply showing up and doing the work you said you would do, without drama, without self-pity. That single action will not undo the mistake, but it will prove something important, that you are still capable of choosing well. And that capacity, once demonstrated, begins to rebuild not only others' trust but your own. You start to remember that you are more than the worst thing you did this week. The fear that others will not forgive is real, but it is also beyond your control. You cannot force forgiveness, and trying to manipulate it only deepens the problem. What you can do is offer the conditions that make forgiveness possible: honesty, accountability, and changed behavior. After that, the response belongs to the other person. Marcus would tell us that this is where we must practice detachment, not cold indifference, but the recognition that we are responsible for our actions, not for how others receive them. If someone remains angry, you do not have the power to erase their anger. If someone loses trust, you cannot argue them back into it. You can only do the work and let the results unfold. This is not resignation. It is clarity about where your agency actually lies. There is also the question of self-forgiveness, which is harder than it sounds. Many of us hold ourselves to a standard we would never impose on another person. We allow others room to be human, to make errors, to learn slowly. But when we fail, we treat it as a moral collapse. The Stoics did not teach self-indulgence, but they also did not teach cruelty toward oneself. Epictetus would ask, if a student made this mistake, what would you tell them? You would likely tell them to acknowledge it, learn from it, and continue. You would not tell them to abandon their work or to define themselves by one failure. Why, then, do you withhold that same reasonableness from yourself? Holding yourself accountable does not require self-loathing. It requires honesty and the will to improve. Those are compatible with kindness. Starting again does not mean pretending the mistake did not happen. It means integrating it into a longer story. You are not erasing the chapter, you are writing the next one. And the next chapter does not need to be dramatic. It can be quiet, steady, almost invisible. You show up. You do the work. You keep your word. You listen more carefully. You check your assumptions. You move a little more slowly when haste was the problem. These are not headline actions, but they are the actions that matter. Over time, they accumulate. Over time, they become the evidence that the mistake was an event, not an identity. This is how you recover, not by grand redemption, but by patient rebuilding. Lying here tonight, you may still feel the weight of what went wrong. That weight will not vanish before morning. But you can choose to carry it differently. Not as proof of your inadequacy, but as information. Not as a life sentence, but as a lesson. The mistake has already happened. The only question now is what you will do with the time and the agency you still possess. Seneca's lesson points toward this: the past is fixed, but your character is not. You can still choose courage. You can still choose honesty. You can still choose the discipline of showing up tomorrow and doing one thing well. That choice does not erase the error, but it does something more important: it proves that you are still capable of integrity. And that proof, quiet and unglamorous as it is the beginning of recovery. Let your body settle now. Let the replaying stop, just for these hours. You have acknowledged the mistake. You have decided on your next action. That is enough for tonight. Tomorrow will bring its own demands, and you will meet them not because you are perfect, but because you are willing. You are willing to start again, to act with honesty, to rebuild what can be rebuilt and to accept what cannot. That willingness is not weakness. It is the foundation of every meaningful recovery. Rest now, knowing that one failure does not define you, and that the work of starting again begins not with confidence, but with the simple decision to take the next right step.